This is Codified Wisdom. Conversations with leaders sharing what experience has taught them and what they know now that they wish they knew earlier. Hosted by Eric Eager, CEO and co-founder of 4Impact Data.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Codified Wisdom, where, as always, we explore the journeys and lessons behind leaders and really just kind of talk about their journey and, how they are shaping the future of business. But even more importantly, like, how did their journey of where they are today and what kind of influences and things that were impactful in their lives. And so today, again, man, I'm just flattered by the level of opportunity to visit with great people. And we have today is Donny Shimamoto, and he's founder of Center for Accounting Transformation. I also like to say that he's a friend of mine, and I admire all the things he's doing. And it's just helping to shape the profession. And it's also covering everything from risk and governance and cybersecurity. And he's a real, forward thinking in the what's happening in the profession. So everybody leans in to always see what Donnie's thinking, what's his advice. And he's not only a CPA, but he's a recognized leader who's helped firms and organizations really rethink how they manage risk and build trust, because this environment is crazy we're in. And he's consistently been named to the top 100 most influential people in the accounting profession. And like I said, he's advised firms and regulators and organizations really how to navigate the intersection of technology and ethics, which is even more important in these AI days. So with all that being said, hey, Donnie, welcome. Thank you for being on the show. And, as always, the way that I always like to start these things off is let's go back in time and, at the beginning, tell us a little bit about where you grew up and some of the early experiences of where you got today and how you started thinking about this responsibility of helping to guide a profession, but also in trust and leadership. When did you start thinking about these things?
Oh, that's like a whole lot of stuff to cover.
So just start, and then just work our way forward there.
Right. So, yeah, okay, we can start at the beginning. So, Donny Shimamoto, I consider myself a non-traditional CPA, born and raised in Hawaii. A fourth generation Asian American, and really, so growing up in Hawaii, that influenced quite a bit of how my thinking has been shaped. I've appreciated that, especially as I've started. I say started as I've been, because it's been a while. You can see the gray in my beard already. Um, as I've traveled both around the US, I think I've spoken, I should say, actually at 35, I think, out of the 50 states, maybe it might even be 40, I think, at this point, of the 50 states, and internationally at different conferences. I've really come to appreciate growing up in Hawaii and the sense of really the sense of community that we have here. And then you also talked about the whole concept of trust. And because of the type of community we have here, there's a large thought around accountability. And in Hawaiian, we call it kuleana, which is
Uh-huh.
what you're responsible for and your duty back to the community. And so I think, yeah, that's been inbred into me from the very beginning.
Really?
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more, about that growing up. I mean, when, that whole idea of community and trust and responsibility, when does that start kind of getting imprinted, growing up in Hawaii? When do you start seeing signs of that,
That
in your family and community and culture?
Yeah, it's that's really instilled in us very early. So from a family standpoint, coming from my background is I'm half Japanese and half Chinese, so the Asian influence, both of those cultures have a very strong family-centric thought process, and it's especially in the Japanese, there's the concept of honor and the honor of the family. So that is instilled very early on, even though I am fourth generation. I mean, that was very clear from my grandparents, and we could see that in the how they told us to make certain decisions, and if you acted inappropriately and how that reflected on the family, like those types of things would come up there. From an Hawaiian standpoint, when you grow up in Hawaii, it is all around us. It is the trash cans on the sidewalks have the word kokua, which means to help.
Yeah.
And so it is help keep the land clean, right? Throw your trash away. We learn Hawaiian history, I think it's fourth grade if I remember correctly. So very early on, we are kind of instilled in this is Hawaiian culture. This is the land that we have grown up in. And then it's really built into just the whole Hawaiian values is really built into everything that we grew up around.
Oh, wow. Um, well, that obviously then it began to kind of give you obviously the foundation of responsibility and to a community. Well, talks about a little bit what drew you to accounting. When did you start seeing an interest in that, and started to kind of take hold?
Yeah, I took my first accounting class my sophomore year in high school, and it actually came very naturally. The fun, the kind of fun thing was the teacher for accounting. It was actually her very first class, I guess. She had just graduated, so she was probably what mid 20s, early 20s, and
Oh
she's
yeah,
she's teaching accounting. And it would always be funny because I I mean it totally came naturally to me. So as we went through the stuff and you and I were talking about T accounts earlier, I could do all of that stuff. And
yeah.
she'd be there trying to do it in the middle class, and then she's getting stuck and she's like, Donnie, how do you did you get it? And usually my answer was like, yeah, you gotta do this. So it was even funny in class that she would come and reference to me.
So and so you got kind of a taste of it then, and then then it started evolving. Talk about did you where did when did you or where did you go to college, and do you just carry it forward to go, hey, I'm going to go major in accounting in college, and then did it just really keep solidifying this is really what you wanted to do for a career?
Actually, yes and no. So my actual love was in the technology field, and you mentioned a lot of the tech early on.
Yeah,
And so the second class I took in the business curriculum, the second class I took was basically an IT class, intro to IT type of a
yeah.
class, and or at that time it was called intro to data processing, I believe. So
Hey, yeah, we're
took,
dating ourselves. That's
took that class next. However, I have to caveat that I have actually been programming, I think, since I was 7. Um, my dad bought me at that time, I think what was it, a Commodore 64 or something like that. So
Oh
talk about
man.
dating.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Um,
that's for our younger audience, you might want to go look that up. That was
That's probably in some museum somewhere. Um,
yeah.
but yeah, I had that super basic computer. This is pre-PCs. I was actually doing programming back then just to kind of create a lot of it was we were creating games for ourselves. My brother and I
Yeah.
would kind of play around, create our own little games. So my love of computers actually has gone all the way back to there. I took the class. Of course, the class was also very easy for me.
Yeah.
That was in my junior year. In my junior year, also the follow-on from the accounting class was that same teacher. I really love her because she let us do so. She was young. She let us do a lot of stuff. We started our own school bookstore, and I was the accountant for the bookstore. So I was actually
Nice.
processing accounts payable, doing payments, doing financial statements. Everything that we had talked about in class, we were actually doing to run the bookstore.
Wow. And so yeah, and I know being from that time, because we're very similar paths. is that back then they didn't have all these, you couldn't go get a data science degree back then.
Yeah.
There was very limited. So you started to begin introduced to the love of technology, but then I guess
Well,
understanding the foundation of business is accounting.
yeah, yeah. And then actually, so after my junior year, so between my junior year and my senior year, I
Yeah.
did a vocation technical I don't forget what they called it. It wasn't an internship, it's like apprenticeship or something,
Yeah.
where I actually went and worked at a business. So local Hawaii business, owned business, took me in effectively as a data entry clerk. I was basically doing data entry, sort of accounts payable, data entry. And that summer, and so we actually had to go, we had to interview, we had to show up in business attire, which like aloha shirts like this for us is business attire. And I worked that summer. Enjoyed it. It was the mix of the two. I was there doing data entry, on the computer as well as seeing the accounting actually occur. Because sorry, it wasn't accounts payable. It was actually accounts. It was billing. I was doing billing work.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
so I could actually see how it resulted in the transactions. And then luckily for me, the controller there saw what I was doing and he actually talked to me and he was like, tell me what is your career path? And I said, well, I really like this computer stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm probably gonna major in accounting because accounting is reliable, right? It's the language of
Oh,
business,
yeah.
all
Oh,
that
yeah.
stuff. I said, but I'm probably gonna do a double degree and do a computer science degree. And he was like, no, 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 no. You don't, that's not what you want to do. You want to do a double major in accounting and management information systems. Because he said both of those are in the business school. Instead of doing a double degree, you actually just do a double major. It'll take you 5 years, but you'll come out with, this much stronger skill set because he had actually done that.
Nice.
So he counseled me on that. I looked into it. Of course, I was like, oh yeah, this totally makes sense. And
Yeah.
so that's when I went in. That's what my major was.
So, all right, so you get your degree and now you're having to go you're now in the real world. Tell us about where you started, kind of first job and I assume that you started to get a sense of the combination of the technology, which also probably then started getting the risk and controls and these other things. But tell us about where was your first job post college, and what were the kind of changes and turns that you took to the path where you are today?
Well, I'm actually gonna go before college because during college, I actually did my first programming job. So
Nice.
again, I had already been doing programming, but I got this job as a student assistant, and there was this database of alumni for this particular program that I was the student assistant to the secretary. And so she had me going and updating all these records for who was living where. This was an international program. So it was kind of fun seeing like Karachi, Pakistan, like, in the 90s. And you're like, where in the world is that coming all the way up opposite from Hawaii? But we were having issues with it. And so I told her, is it okay if I modify this? Because it doesn't do it quite the way I want it to do it. And it's
Yeah.
longer. So we actually got permission from the IT department there for me to modify the program. I ended up almost rewriting the whole thing that they had originally given us. And this is in Microsoft Access.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of still, even though it wasn't my first after college, it was really my professional programming in a sense. After that job, I actually interned at Coopers and Lybrand, again, kind of dating.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
and I was on the IT team there. So I was actually
Yeah.
I was help desk, I was helping deploy new laptops, I was helping to get new systems installed. Coopers had just moved to its first paperless auditing system. I believe they were one of the first to do that. So I was working on that already. So that was my first exposure to accounting firms. And at that point, having learned everything, my goal was to be a partner at that time it was Big Six, I think it was. I mean, might have been
Yeah.
still the
Yeah.
Big Eight accounting firm. And so I was like, this is great because I got an IT internship, which again, that was tech was my love. But it's going to give me that path because I was double majoring to be able to get my CPA as well as to become a partner in a big firm.
Well, as many of us that started in that period, that was the career path.
That
You know, you
was,
started there and you moved from senior manager, et cetera, to partner.
yeah,
But obviously there was a point, like a number of us, that you kind of go, okay, there's maybe a different option, or hey, maybe that's not exactly what I want to do. Tell us
yes.
about when did you kind of go, okay, I'm gonna jump out of that partner track and start doing something different.
Well, I'll finish answering your first question first, which is so when I
Yeah.
started with them, I was on what was called the dual track. Because
Yeah.
this will explain why I'm splitting out. So the dual track was we did both financial audit and IT audit. So when I
Okay.
started full time with Cooper's, yeah, it was still Cooper's at the time, I was called this dual track. So that's where I got my exposure to risk and controls, and I got to see how that tied back into not just financial statements, but the overall running of an organization. I only actually did that for about a year, and then I got pulled onto a project that the CNL um, consulting division was doing for Pearl Harbor here in Hawaii. And
Yeah.
this was actually a global project on that was a knowledge management project. And we were one of the first official knowledge management projects. Really, what it was business process redesign, or today what we would call business process improvement,
Yeah.
or actually today we'd probably call it a transformation
Yeah.
project, because what we were doing was literally going into all of the different divisions at the headquarters here in Pearl Harbor. We were looking at how they were doing things, and we were figuring out, is there an automation that needs to be done? Is there process improvement? Like, how do we actually help improve and change the administrative side of the Navy here to make them more efficient and effective at what they were doing, so that more of the focus could be on war readiness, right? Or defense readiness. I would prefer to say that, especially today. But
Yeah.
if we look at, that's really what we were looking at. And that was the part where I went, okay, now I can see where I'm actually making a difference. So that's where my love of truly the consulting part came in. For me to advance, they said, well, you're going to have to move to Virginia and work on a whole bunch of other projects because the partners don't know you. And I was reporting to Virginia at that time. And I
Yeah.
said, yeah, yeah, thanks, but no thanks. And I left, and I actually joined the largest systems integrator here in Hawaii to help them start a consulting division. And so that was my split away from uh, public accounting and the dreams of being a Big Four partner.
Yeah. Uh, well, I mean, it's worked out pretty well. Um, so talking about, okay, so you go there and you got that first taste of, I can have a lot of influence. I can help, uh, I can help a lot of people. Um, what point did you realize that your voice and perspective are beginning to get influence? And because I'm sure you just didn't wake up one day and then and announce I'm going to start being an influencer. As my is my people talk about today, hey, I want to be an influencer. Well, I don't. When we were growing up, nobody talked about being an influencer.
Yeah.
When did you start to kind of notice that? Hey, I'm people starting to listen to what I have to say and leaning into, hey, what do you think? And what's your perspective?
That's a really tough one. So it- being being in what is probably more of a specialty, and I think it's still fairly true. That's I was hesitating because I'm like, technology is so ubiquitous in accounting now, but I do still think people view us that are IT specialists or CPAs that have the additional IT or the dual IT disciplines. I think we still are viewed as specialists.
Yeah,
That probably, I mean, that was always kind of the natural for me. I mean, even this
yeah,
consulting project, I was specifically put on stuff. For example, I built a database that tracked the inventory of Tomahawk and missiles and torpedoes for submarines. And so right
okay,
there, you can hear the intersection. It's a database that's tracking inventory.
yeah.
right? So
And a little bit of risk. You know, you can't exactly go to and do an inventory and say, well, just write that off to obsolescence. We got a few missing tomahawks, but no big deal.
yeah, well, and toward that, we were actually tracking maintenance as well. So there was a risk element because if these were not maintained well, but
So
yeah, so that it's always kind of been that blend for me. And again, that project was probably the one where I was like, wow, yeah, this blend of this two, it, really becomes super powerful, even for something like as big as the Navy.
and well, and I know today that technology is one of the big disruptors, and we always talked about before in the past, but it's a storm hitting the profession with technology. Um, so, you know, migrating to a little bit more of now you're becoming an influencer. You're starting to realize. Um, Tell us a little bit about, Center for Accounting Transformation. You go out on your own. Talk about when, because even when you go out on your own and you start to build a team of people, on the entrepreneurship piece of it, you're working for somebody else. They're selling the projects. You don't have to worry about, and you go one day, hey, I'm going to go do this on my own. And then it becomes that big first step, which is I'm going to hire somebody and have a payroll. Talk about that. What made you decide to go out on your own? And then what led you to, begin the Center for Accounting Transformation?
Well, there's a couple things wrapped up in there. So I mentioned I went to this largest systems integrator, which is basically an IT consultancy.
Yeah.
And what I am working for someone else. And the biggest thing I learned there, it was actually about branding, which is something that, as a business owner, you really need to learn and learn early, I think, is how to distinguish yourself.
Yeah.
So the challenge I had at that organization was that they were seen as basically outsourced programmers. And I was hired to help build more of a business consulting practice and bring
Yeah.
in process improvement, all this stuff. And every time I would meet with a client, they'd be like, wait, but you guys are programmers. I'm like, yeah, but I'm new. Here's my skill set. This is what we're
Okay.
doing. And I have this team behind me that can help deliver these solutions. And it was just became there was this whole brand conflict. And so I ended up deciding I didn't even stay there a year for other reasons as well, but I ended up staying a year and I ended up going on my own. Luckily for me, one of my clients that had been with me, by that time it had become PwC. So that had been with me at PwC, I actually reached out to them to say, hey, do you guys have any work? Because I'm thinking about splitting off. And they said, oh, we were just about to ask you if you wanted to take a whole bunch of this work, because they've been outsourcing it to somebody else. And they knew
Yeah.
that I understood what they needed because I had done a
Yeah.
little bit of work for them before. And so I said, well, would you do it with me on my own? And they came back and said, yeah, we'll take that chance with you. That was the start of work. It was only about half time for the amount of work that it actually had that they had for me, but it was enough for me to take that step. And to hire the first person was where the work started getting to where I was like, "Ah, this is too much for me to just do." And then also from a software development standpoint, I mean, the best practice is the developer is not testing their
Yeah.
product. So I hired an intern to do the testing for the product that I was actually developing.
Oh man. Um, so then, okay, so you're off and that's always good. When you're on your own and bam, there's work. Um, you begin to grow, you begin to, and obviously it seems like now that there's natural transition in seeing the risk. Um, let's talk about now you're evolving and seeing these, kind of risk along with technology. Um, And, and I can tell you, a lot of us, uh, the amount even today of cybersecurity and, there's that piece of it. Technology is now making it easier to have attacks, and then the protection of clients' data. We're entrusted with those things. Now let's talk about your viewpoint of, you're now, thoughts of where did you start to see the emerging risk? You started to kind of see this slowly. And when did you start to say, hey, I need to be an advocate for the profession, and start teaching and telling other people about it, kind of sharing the wisdom that you had? Because the key is, um, like you pointed out, most of the stuff is happening on the mainland, in Virginia. You're in Hawaii and you're starting to having an influence in the space. What did you start doing? Were you just publishing blogs? Or was it just organic? The people just going, hey, you need to call Donnie. I got a problem with this. Hey, call Donnie. And then it was like all of a sudden you started probably getting phone calls and emails and people calling you, through the US. When did you start noticing that? And then when did you start transitioning? And I've got a lot asking here. When did you start seeing that? And when did you start talking? When did they start saying, hey, you're pretty good at this. Would you like to speak on this topic?
So the part of what I did when I started my firm was I had to figure out how am I going to get business. So part of that was one, just reaching back out to the network that I had built through PwC. A lot of my work still comes from those people that we all were when I was an auditor, and the
Yeah.
people that were the actually seniors, the managers, and actually I can even think of a senior manager that is now a client because they know that I know this. But I also, how am I going to get more exposure? So I got involved with the Hawaii Society of CPAs. I became the chair of the Technology Advocacy Committee. I'm actually having returned to Hawaii a year ago. I've taken that mantle back on again because nobody's taken it up since I left 10 years prior. So if that became part of it. She would let me teach classes about little things that came on. I would write articles for her monthly magazine. I'm back to writing articles for her monthly magazine now. That was the local level. In 2005, I volunteered for what was then called the IT Executive Committee at the AICPA. That was the committee that oversaw the IT specialty practices within our profession. So joined that committee. That at that time, the risk-based standards were the auditing risk-based standards were being revised. And so I was involved in a project to help write the guidance and clarifications around those standards. And so that was my first bringing me back to IT audit. So that was where I really got introduced into risk. And part of that was also right around that time was the migration from SAS 70 to SOC reporting. And that's where I got introduced to this concept of trust principles. And actually that might actually be a little later, maybe
Yeah.
2010, 11-ish. So I was
Yeah.
involved in that. So that's kind of the evolution around the risk towards trust. Uh,
Yeah.
in between that, 2008 was the first time I spoke at the national level at what is now AICPA Engage. And I was asked to speak about business intelligence. That was an interesting one. Here I am, let's see, 2008, I would have been 33. Yeah,
Yeah.
33. And I'm being asked to speak at a national stage on like business intelligence. And I was really talking about the role of the accountant in business intelligence. I was actually paired with a business intelligence expert who talked
Yeah.
about technology and all that stuff. And I talked about how as accountants we add value into that and what our role really is in that.
Oh, wow. And so now, to your talking, your beginning audience, well, now, kind of fast forward a little bit to, and today, and then this journey where you're at, where you're doing programming, and then start, SOC and risk, anybody that's in tech understands SOC too. It's like,
Yeah.
yes, I have two socks. Um, where do you see? So let's talk about this now. You're now helping because technology is so critical for the next kind of evolution, the transformation of where we're at. And now we've got AI, ethics, and and we keep talking about this, the traditional work of accounting and CPA firms, the audit and tax, which were most of, anything to do with compliance has been, the mainstay for most firms up to this point. Well, now where do you see this wave of AI and technology? And where do you see that? How much of effect is it having, on your opinion, on the traditional revenue streams where they added value to clients? And how much is that is pushing the shift over to the, advisory, the things that I think a lot of us got into the profession was what you wanted, we all wanted to do, which is make an impact and help companies. But, we were, a lot of things, just the mechanics of doing accounting just took a
Yeah.
little bit of time. There wasn't much time left there. Talk about what you're seeing happening and where do you see the transformation of the profession going today?
Yes, I would agree with you. And I think it's important to emphasize that I believe, and through all of my conversations, domestically and internationally with accountants, the majority of us get into this profession to help people. So whether it's the tax person working with families and or individuals, whether it is the auditor, really looking at how can I help make sure that this business is not going to have fraud and or that the public that this business can raise capital, whether it's just to get the bank loan or to be listed on the public exchange. All of us, I think, a majority of us get into this really to help other people. And I hear that consistently. And my Center for Accounting Transformation has done research, and we're seeing that that when we ask people, why did you become an accountant? We're seeing those words start to come up. So it's that balance of both. There's always work. So there's a
Yeah,
reminder of the
yeah,
work.
the
And then
security.
I want to help people. So I think that is a great foundation there. The and you're also right that historically, the challenge is that we've had to spend so much time doing the traditional work, the grunt work, the actual bookkeeping, right? The actual tax returns. And what we're seeing now is technology coming in. And earlier you were using the word disruption. I really hate using that word.
Yeah,
The reason I hate using that word is it's a negative word and it makes it seem like it's a bad thing.
yeah, exactly,
Instead, I always
exactly.
like to say what we're doing is we're seeing technology come in and it is enhancing what we do as a profession. And really, what we're seeing, and just last week, I was at the CPA Practice Advisor Thought Leader Symposium, and the first half of the day we spent talking about the impact of AI. And collectively, we were all pretty much in agreement that AI is going to actually minimize the amount of work that we have to do in this per se compliance or traditional space. Now, some people may think of that as a bad thing, and you see a lot
Yeah,
of things out there going like, "Oh, we're not going to need accountants anymore." But most people don't realize that the compliance piece is not the core of what we do. The compliance piece is almost like a necessary evil in a sense that to
yeah,
be able to get to the advisory, I need a good compliance base. And I can't emphasize that enough because, say, 10 years ago, we saw the AI CPA making this call out that said, you need to all switch to advisory. You need to switch to advisory. You need to adopt advisory. You need to not stop doing so much compliance. And being a compliance only firm, I mean, excuse me, being an advisory only firm, because we are a CPA firm, I can tell you we have to do we don't do the compliance work, but we do a lot of fixing of the compliance work and the processes so that that compliance data is reliable, because we cannot advise and look to the future if when we look at, okay, what has happened already is not correct. We have bad data to then plan future off of. So we spend probably more than half our time still today helping people fix this compliance side before we can introduce the additional systems. So let's say fix core accounts payable processes, fix the way that they are processing expense reports, these
Yeah.
simple things so that we can move into, okay, now let's take that and let's use that for forecasting and let's use that to inform strategic decisions. And let's start pulling operational data in so that we can use operational data to do more accurate forecasting of the financial data. And that's the advisory side becomes reliant or reliable, only as reliable as the compliance space is. So when you ask about the revenue stream, I think this base stays. It has to stay, but it
Yeah.
gets shrunken down a lot so that we as accountants can actually focus more on this other part, which is, again, I think that's the part where we help people make the better decisions. We help them really look at how do I improve what I'm doing? How do I be more successful and help people, which is why many of us get into the profession.
Well, and I totally agree with you there. Um, and when I have opportunity to talk to everybody, and we both have lived through all, when you're back on the, Commodore Vic, you're back in those days to where we're at. You have lived through, we have lived through all these cycles, and I do talk to some of the, oh, I want to just say, the traditional partners, and I keep hearing, and I want to get your perspective on this. Oh, all this noise about AI. I heard that, we have lived through these transformation before and we're fine. And I keep trying to warn them that this is different. This is, what's your perspective and how do you respond to those that are saying, "Oh, I've lived through this before. I heard that 10 years ago, and and tax or audit are still around. We aren't commoditized." And what are you advising and telling people when you hear that kind of commentary?
So my thought on this, and I am hearing that. So the direct answer to your question is that's fine. Recognize that the volume of that compliance work is going to shrink. So if you're going to focus on that, that's completely valid. Just recognize that there's this smaller pool and a lot of it will be automated. So you'll be like supervising the robots or AI instead of actually doing the work, which at the partner level they already supervise anyway, so
Yeah,
probably irrelevant to them, but that's really that pool.
yeah,
I should mention too that our Center for Accounting Transformation, we did research on what makes firms more successful, a compliance focus or an advisory focus. What we actually found was it was the balance of the two
uh-huh,
that actually makes a firm successful. And it was, they were literally right in the middle of the spectrum when we looked at that. So it is currently the balance of the two. I do think that that will shift over a little more. And it's not that this is not getting done. It's getting there's less effort on this because it's automated.
yeah,
So definitely in tax preparation and bookkeeping, I believe that's almost going to be 100% true, that those will
yeah,
be completely automated. Audit has an element of judgment, especially
yeah,
for application of financial statement standards and for certain type of special transactions, right? And the other thing that audit has, especially as we look at SOC and this concept of can I trust the
yeah,
financial statements, there's the risk and controls. That's the piece that also has a lot of judgment in there that will never be automated.
yeah,
The analysis of it might be automated, but that final judgment call, I believe that will never be automated. So I think audit has a little bit of a protection in there, especially as we shift audit from primarily a substantive testing focus into more of a risk and controls focus. So But the opportunity, primarily on the tax and bookkeeping side, is the tax advisory or tax. Some of it is tax planning, but really to me, it needs to look at a bigger horizon around wealth management and value management as a whole. Likewise, on the bookkeeping side, it's really the move from what I think of as traditional controller activities into more of the CFO level. How do I look at the enterprise view of risk? How do I look at the holistic picture of a business? And how do I help that business plan for the future, whether it's growth, whether it is being acquired, whether it is acquiring others. Like that's the part that becomes exciting and interesting.
Well, and then the other thing I was going to get your perspective on is that the people that go, I get it. I hear you, and I'm a little scared. This is, we, accountants, we're not known for rapid adoption and massive change, but it's being thrust upon, and I want to use the word transformation. So it's, transformation is, it's not disrupting, but it's, we're having to evolve. And a lot of people go, I hear you on the advisory, but why do you think so many firms are having, I hear sometimes it's like, I don't even know where to start. It's such a big term.
Yeah.
And, and a lot of firms are just going, I hear you. But how do I get other partners? Because I was literally talking to somebody today about this too. Okay, so there's two dynamics, and I'll wrap this up in a question. There's the dynamics of the partners who are the tax and audit, where most of the revenue came from. And then you got this new crop of, hey, we're going to hire an advisor, we're going to start building an advisory, but getting the buy-in and support of we're in, we need to do this, and kind of almost kind of minimize the roles in which I became partner on.
Yeah.
And the second thing is that how do I even grow advisory? Because it's so big. So, first question is for those who are trying to grow advisory, any suggestions of how to get buy-in to from the other partners to go, this is strategic. We need to do this versus, hey, that's nice. Go do that. And then the second thing is that for the people, then they buy in, they go, all right, we're going advisory. Like, how do you baby step your way into that? Because it's a big shift. And I don't think you can just go, dive in and go, okay, we're going to do a massive advisory practice now. So, first one, how do you transfer the partner buy-in, and then how do you even get started?
So and let's go back to your example of the partner that says there've been all these technology shifts in the past, and we've not had to change a lot for all of these. Uh, this one is different, and I know some people. I have not been one of those, but some people in the past have said these are really big shifts, and it's going to force you. I did not agree with a lot of that in the past. This one, I agree that it's valid. And it should be evident just from the level of what AI is able to do, and how we're able to leverage that. And not just AI, but coding and how quickly we're able to now automate things. Actually, maybe we should say automation, how much more reliably, which comes back to the trust, how
Yeah.
much more reliably we're actually able to automate things. That is the biggest difference now. That speed of automation is increasing exponentially, not linearly. So that is the biggest change. The other thing I also think people need to really think about is the fact that it is actually way easier today, probably than it ever has been, to start
Yeah.
your own firm. So the risk is not that the work is going to go away, the compliance work is going to go away so much, because it will still be there to a
Yeah.
certain extent. And if you're doing value pricing or advanced pricing, you can maintain your margins. So
Yeah.
it will be there, and you can maintain your firm. The question is, who's going to want to be around to do that? that is the threat, which is the loss of people. So this person that's saying, I want to do advisory, I want to do advisory, and you go, no, 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 just keep doing the compliance work. They're eventually going to go, you know what? F this. I'm going to start my own firm, and they're going to leave, right? And
Yeah,
you see it. You see it, and it's been happening for a long time. Funny enough, a lot of people that go through leadership programs in our profession end up leaving their older, normally larger firms and starting their own firms. Why? Because it's easy, and I can start to do the stuff that I want to do. And in fact, because if the firm itself is not offering that service, I can go
yeah,
after the firm's clients who I already have a relationship with. And it's like the firm goes, "Oh, you're stealing our clients." Like, no, you do not offer that service. I'm offering them a service you're not offering them.
got it. And um, so you see, so you're seeing that there's going to be what I've been kind of advocating and want to get your perspective on is that you can with all this AI going on, and the automation, you can kind of look at it as the glass is half full or half empty. Way I'm looking at it, it's not eliminating jobs, it's promoting people. And I want to say it's going to be this great promotion because what we're going to both dive in a little bit. We both have a sense of caring also for the next generation, helping kids understand the opportunities. Talk about, what's your perspective on this automation? Do you see this? Hey, we can have the ability to higher level thinking and higher level. So everybody's going to get this promotion. Congratulations, world. We're all getting a promotion. Do you see that in the accounting profession? Are people beginning to recognize that? And do you think it will turn that kids? Because I know that even my own sons, I go, hey, accounting's going to be around for a while. And they're like, oh, Dad, that's boring. I'm like, come on now. Do you think that it'll kind of turn the tide of people rethinking the profession, that it can become more of a business advisory, business impact? And are you seeing that too? That it's not a job eliminations; it's a promoting the untapped talent and capabilities of people.
Yes, I completely agree. So, and I think that's where, a lot of times we talk about people leaving the profession. I think we have to correct that. A lot of times people are leaving the industry, and they leave the industry because they're stuck in these compliance roles, and what they do is they go and work for businesses as a controller or as a CFO, where now they do have the ability to actually do more advisory, even though it's inside the organization. They're doing more advisory and helping a business owner really make those better decisions. And that is, so it's something that's always been there. What I think a lot of this is going to do is provide the opportunity to retain more people in the accounting industry, because now they can stay within a firm and do it for the small business or middle market clients that need that needs those advisory services, but can't afford to have someone in-house leading them down that path. So not only does it help us attract the next generation, it helps us retain more people within the industry as well.
And what I like that you kind of touched on there too, and there's been a couple things you've touched on, is that the ability to start your own business is going to be easier and easier. And you touched on the accounting industry. I get correct all the time. It's not. It's a profession, so I want to be
No,
respectful.
no, 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 no. There's both. If we're talking about public accounting and firms, that's the industry. And a lot of firms like to say we're the profession. You're part of the profession. The other major part of the profession is business and industry, which is the controllers and CFOs, the
Got it.
finance departments.
There you go. Okay, so we've got that nice clarification. What I'm thinking is that now the explosion of entrepreneurship that there's going to be now you can create code in days, if not hours, that would have taken months and months and months. But that business acumen, that there's going to be thousands and thousands of entrepreneurs, but guess what? Never built a business before, never walked through the stages of growing, never, never had. Do you see this explosion of businesses, but at that same time, a real opportunity to help all these businesses, these new entrepreneurs through this journey, which I don't think you're going to get that in any AI or code. I mean, what do
Completely
you
agree with
see
you.
happening, and do you see this as a real opportunity for the firms out there to help guide, grow, and really move into this what I'm gonna call the impactful things that we all went into the profession many, many years ago?
Exactly. You're completely right. That is the opportunity that we're going to see this explosion, and this is different than the gig work economy, because the gig work economy really is just individual outsourcing to me in a sense. So I'm or independent contractoring, to use the word that's really what that is. But when you've got a bunch of people that truly are entrepreneurs that are actually trying to build a business rather than just work for themselves, when they're really trying to build a business, then they are going to have these needs where they need the better advice. They need to be able to figure out how can they grow. They need to be able to manage their risks, whether it's employment, and this is why it's not, we've been talking about tech, but this is why it's transformation, because and you have to deal with people issues. You have to deal with process issues. You have to look at business structures. You have to look at business practices. Like that's why we do transformation, because we're not just doing tech. Tech just happens to be one of the enablers of it, but
Yep.
there's all these other aspects that need to be addressed, and that is the transformation. And whether it's a slower evolution or whether it's big jumps, those are the things where when it's a bigger jump, it's higher risk. So I need better advice and I need better preparation to make that big jump compared to if I'm going to make these little hops. So it also depends on how quickly people are going to want to move. And in our age of instant gratification, I think we are going to see where people want to move a lot faster. And you see it in the startups all the time, especially in the tech sector now. And it's why I think we also see a lot of them fail, because they have not done the right work to ensure that the business itself is sustainable. And that's what we help
The
with.
uh, and to that point, do you see, AI, do you see the need to have that human advisor, no matter how smart the AI gets and the agents get? Do you see that diminishing the need? Because there's always this, well, the AI, again, this kind of blank narrative out there. Well, AI is going to replace advisors. Do you say, no, it actually may? Do you agree with the comment? No, it's actually going to lean in more for that, the emotion, the need, the
I
somebody
don't
working,
I don't think it's
augmenting, not replacing advisors.
I don't think it's needed more. I'll be honest with that. I don't think it's needed more. I think the role of the advisor is when the person wants the confidence. So you can have all the information you want, but the question is, am I making the right decision? Am I understanding this information that's being given to me correctly? Does this apply? Am I applying this correctly to my situation? That's not something that the AI is going to do, especially since it's so sycophantic, right? It's going to say, yes, this is good. You should do this. Yes, you should do, right? It's going to give you that affirmation. That's may or may not actually be true. What you need is the advisor that goes, yes, this parts are correct. If these assumptions are true, then this part is correct. Or no, this part doesn't apply because you've previously said this or these other things have occurred. And so these are not correct. And that becomes the role of advisor. Now, whether we're needed more for that, it really depends on the client. There are some clients that feel confident in what they do. The clients that want the additional confidence from someone that they can trust, they're the ones that are going to come to us as advisors.
Well, and I want to touch on one last thing before we wrap up. You talked about sycophancy, and I was just reading a report the other day that Gartner was predicting that this AI first philosophy, that hey, we're going to embed AI in our firm, and this that the inherent risk that you're inheriting a risk because is that it's going to lead to false confidence and potential damaging. They predicted 25% of businesses and firms that rely on AI for advice and guidance solely, that 25% are going to have damage, financial damages and reputation damages based on this because AI is not equipped as sycophancy. What's your thoughts on that perspective? Do you see that as a danger? And oh, by the way, last thing, we're accountants. We like to have an audit trail. We like to tick and tie. We have, supporting documents. I can't go, the AI told me so. What do you see this as a risk, and what are some things that people can do to help minimize that?
Definitely, that the whole overconfidence, right? That's a huge risk. So that's why I say like we can't force people to want to have that additional advisor. So I don't that's why I don't feel unless people realize. And there's a lot of people and there's a lot of entrepreneurs with a lot of ego that are like, I don't need your advice.
Oh yeah,
So
oh yeah,
that's right. So that's why like when I look at that from a demand standpoint, no, I don't think that's going to change a whole lot. Uh, if we really were to look at again, the role of the advisor is to help the client be successful and achieve whatever it is they're trying to achieve. And part of what we need to do and part of our professional duty is to have the backup or the audit trail, as you've said. And that's one of the things I'm seeing finally shifting is I'm seeing more of these AI tools giving you that audit trail. This is how I came to this conclusion. Here are the source, the easiest one for the LLM side is here are the sources that I got this from.
yeah,
So you can go back and review it. But even in the ones, because we're using AI as a blanket term, the sycophancy really comes from the LLM side. When we look at things like machine learning and some of these other more mathematical science side of AI, those actually have a reliability, or they will tell you the level of confidence that they have or the level of reliability that they think they have in what they've given you. The LMs do not do that. So it depends on what type of AI you're trying to use and how you've incorporated it into your overall tech stack, because it's not all about AI. And with the new agentic side coming in, it's about having different calls, having different agents, could also look at leveraging different APIs to do all kinds of different things, but there's still this coordination layer, this orchestration layer that has to occur. So it really depends on how you put things together, which comes back to this whole concept of how do I know that I can trust this, which is going to come back to IT audit of I went and I looked at how this is processing, and I will tell you that it looks like it's processing and there's the low risk of error. So it all comes back in the end to can I trust this? And that needs to be built into the way technology is building and evolving, and that is not in vibe coding,
Oh man. Well then,
which is a
yeah,
whole
we're,
other
we're
can of worms that we could.
well. I was going to say, in a selfless plug here, the next evolution of decision intelligence, which is going to help. It's kind of like the old for us old timers, BASF. We don't make it; we just make it better. But that we'll hold that for our next episode of Codified Wisdom. And so, well, hey, listen, I always ask everybody at the end of, last thing I always like to ask everybody is that if somehow AI created a time machine and it popped in behind you and you could go back at some point to the younger Donnie and go back and give some advice or wisdom that you'd like to give the younger Donnie, what things and items would you pass on that may helped him get a little bit further faster, or gave some confidence? What would you give what would the today's Donnie give to the younger Donnie?
The biggest one is don't afraid to be yourself. And so there's a lot of, for example, coming from Hawaii, I felt like I had to conform to the continental US standard of business attire and the way that we conducted ourselves in business. And I realize now that that was a huge, huge limiting factor. And I needed to really be myself as someone from Hawaii, embracing the aloha spirit and the way that we work and operate. And that would be my advice, is just be yourself and don't be afraid to be yourself.
Oh man, that is that's so true. And actually, it would actually now it probably it draws people. I admire and see and the uniqueness there. Wow, what great advice. Well, hey, listen, again, thank you for sharing your journey, your thoughts on what's going on in the profession. I hope everybody, like I always say, I hope there was some nuggets in there that people can take away and get some, get further faster, not having to make the same mistake, and learn from your experience, your wisdom, some guidance. So thank you again. Hey, everybody, thank you for taking the time. And we'll talk to you on next week's episode of Codified Wisdom. So everybody take care and have a great week.
The collective wisdom and lessons learned from these conversations have been the inspiration for the business guidance system at 4Impact Data, helping CPA firms grow client advisory services.